In this video, we will be tasting and talking about spring and summer batches of Alishan High Mountain Oolong tea from Taiwan. We're here today tasting perhaps the most popular and most renowned type of Taiwan tea, Alishan High Mountain Jin Xuan Oolong. Jin Xuan is the name of a hybrid cultivar that was designed by the Tea Research and Extension Station here in Taiwan. It was released in the early 80s and has become the most popular hybrid cultivar to be produced on Taiwan. And it has become famous among tea lovers for its particularly buttery or creamy, or what is most commonly referred to as milky flavor profile or character. Sometimes it is called milk oolong. So we decided to taste our spring crop together with our summer crop that we just put on the shelf and is available now, just for a learning experience to see what the differences are from the same farm, same factory, basically same farming practices, just 2 consecutive seasons. After brewing the tea, when the leaves are still in the cup, is the best time, without burning your nose, to smell the aroma coming off the brewed leaves in the cup. I wanted to get a visual of the leaves, so we took them out. But you still get the essence or the very subtle character of the aroma just from what's lingering in the cup, even after it's cooled down. The spring batch seems a little bit more herbal. I can get a buttery note in there, but the summer batch is definitely a classic buttery, milky, aromatic note in the cup. The brewed tea looks, well, it's clearly a little bit darker in the spring batch. That possibly could be due somewhat to post-oxidation, even though the tea was vacuum sealed since the spring harvest. The leaves do transform subtly over time. But it also, more likely, or probably more significantly at least, it has to do with the processing and how the moisture was depleted from the tea leaves and how much they were oxidized. It still has a nice transparent color, so I think it was sufficiently dried properly, in other words. But the summer batch is way lighter. The spring batch is a golden yellow color, going deeper and deeper as it brews. And the summer batch starts out almost like a green tea. It's very pale green, slightly yellow, gets a little more golden the second brew, and then the third brew is more classic. So maybe it just took a little bit longer to open up and brew. The brewed, let's go take a look at the dried leaves quickly. Fairly similar. A little more color variation in the spring batch, a couple of yellowed leaves, but not much. As I recall, the first flush of spring was slow growing, even for Jin Xuan, and particularly for the oolong crops. They were delayed a couple of weeks in harvest because it didn't get warm here until late spring, until like late May. So the leaves just didn't really fully flourish during that early spring growing season. So they were on the tree for a little bit longer than usual. The summer batch is a little bit darker, I would say noticeably darker, and more uniform in color. A more classic standard of quality. Just the difference in coloration is mostly from the stem material. It looks like all the leaves are a nice dark green with no overly mature leaves. I think they were just on the tree longer but didn't grow as big. It looks like a little bit more substantial growth here, more even sizes of stem material, and just a normal growth. So this was stunted, you might say. It still has fully grown leaves, just not as uniform as the summer looks, which had plenty of precipitation and warmer temperatures. We have come to conclude that this area produces the best Jin Xuan on the island. in the Meishan township at around 1,000 meters. Can be a little bit under, can be a little bit over 1,000, but that parameter, 800 to 1,100 meters, you don't find much Jin Xuan above 1,100 meters. Above that, Oolong does just fine, and that's what's more in demand and more valued here in Taiwan. Okay, let's get into it. Taste the first brew of spring. Yeah, it's some kind of herbal notes coming off the spoon. Still quite fresh flavor. Very satisfying Jin Xuan. Noticeable oxidation, not very green, as the brewed tea indicates. Nice. Summer. Summer was processed, or turned out anyway, as much more of a classic Alishan Jin Xuan. Lightly oxidized, green, but the lighter, when these leaves are just delicately oxidized, that's when the milky notes come out most prominently. So this is definitely a more standard version of Alishan High Mountain Jin Xuan tea. It has a nice fresh green quality to it, but it's totally balanced out with a sweet, creamy flavor, as Alishan has become renowned for. Second brew. Very much more substantial. Clearly Jin Xuan, and it's especially in the aftertaste, but it's got a nice thickness to it, a nice body to it, which is typically the result of more significant oxidation. Slightly astringent bite on the end there for the spring batch. Yeah, so lighter, more delicate, greener, with more prominent aromatic notes. So if you're into the aromatic profile, the very distinctly milky notes to it, it's a little bit less sweet than the spring batch, but it's more Jin Xuan in its character. I'm gonna go straight to the third over here. Significantly a deeper shade of golden yellow. There's this slippery, smooth texture to it. That's quite distinct. Okay, I'm gonna go back. One quick sweep. Spring, first brew. Pastry, creamy, and then that aftertaste, breathing out the nose, it's very buttery. Light, very minimal oxidized, and subtle. Definitely more of a high notes profile here rather than the more substantial bodied spring tea. That's for the first brew. More of the same, almost a little bit of savory herb coming out. This is, it's got some oolong character here. The deeper oxidation has brought out a little bit more body and a little bit more substance to the flavor profile. And you get the Jin Xuan notes at the end in the finish. Summer. Herbal, buttery, with nice combination of herbal and buttery sweet. Very Jin Xuan. This is a good example. If you want to introduce a quality Jin Xuan to someone who hasn't had it before, this is a great batch to do it with. Okay, third batch, spring. Excuse me, third brew, spring. More and more substance as you go, less and less complexity. A nice everyday drinker, the spring tea was, because in my experience, the more oxidized the tea is, the more balanced it is in its profile, the more endurance it has in terms of you can drink it every day and never really tire of it. So it becomes like a classic more like an oolong that's significantly oxidized. I forgot where I was at. I'm going to go second here. Straight up Jin Xuan. Yum. It's almost like ice creamy. It's not too green, especially in the more substantial second and third brews. There's enough sweetness, enough complexity. Savory maybe, just more substance and balance to the brew. So there we have it, spring and summer batches of Alishan High Mountain Jin Xuan Oolong. Summer batch is now on the shelf, and here's the little well-kept secret. Jin Xuan, less so, but significantly still. The summer and fall harvests are cheaper than the spring and winter harvest, especially with Jin Xuan compared to Qingxin Oolong. The second harvest of the year can be, depending on what you like, better than the first harvest. Like this year, where it was a slow growing season in spring, it produced more substantial leaves, but they have more of a hardy oolong character. The second flush for this Jin Xuan farm, or this plot of Jin Xuan, grew more normally. It's very supple in its leaf material, substantial, but you can tell it's all new growth that wasn't on the tree for very long before it reached full maturity. So it's a more uniform crop, processed in the classic light but sufficiently oxidized to give you that perfect balance of fresh, creamy, sweet, and a little bit of savory note in there for the summer batch of Alishan High Mountain Jin Xuan. So get your summer crop now. If you still have spring Alishan Jin Xuan around, you can do what I'm doing here, do a taste comparison, really get to know what happens from season to season from the same source. Check it out.